So recently I was watching some videos about health by doctors Mark Hyman as well as Stephen Gundry, which touched on the subject of milk, the former of which I believe brought up a Harvard study providing some interesting findings, and so I decided to take a look. If you've watched my Something in the Water videos, you may remember a couple of findings from a book titled Estrogeneration, which may have made you think twice about how you eat your cereal. In it, the author, Dr. Anthony J., brings up that despite excretion rates of estrogen being higher in cow milk during pregnancy, their milk can be mixed with batches from non pregnant cows prior to being shipped to stores. The purpose of the series was to shed light on what research is showing regarding the effects of exogenous sources of estrogen on people, and how this estrogen laden milk affects men is a perfect example. It turns out that men who consumed this store bought milk were shown to excrete large amounts of estrogen via urination, but more importantly, their testosterone levels had decreased within 1 hour. As for the study Dr. Hyman brought to my attention, well, in considering all the marketing we've been exposed to regarding the health benefits of milk, the results of the study, simply titled Milk and Health, are pretty damning. First off, to go back to the estrogenic component, as was found, the sex hormone content of milk is increased if cows are milked while they are pregnant. But this practice appears to be widespread among both conventional and organic milk products. Likely, someone would have proposed going organic as a means to circumvent this, but this would be incorrect. Undoubtedly, many, if not the majority of you, have been bombarded over the years with advertisements asserting that cow milk does the body good. But from the study, outside of the factor of height, you will be much better off going without. Let's start off with a potential benefit of milk. It turns out that even when accounting for nutritional intake, milk consumption actually is related to increased height. The question, however, is what exactly in it contributes to this? This is something that is still unknown. But let's say as a kid, you were ahead of the curve, knew about the sexual marketplace, and resorted to chugging all the milk you could get your little hands on. While today you may be a 6'5" gigachad, this is not all positive, as this is associated with an increased risk of health conditions such as hip fractures and even different forms of cancer. As stated in the study, among men, milk intake during adolescence was linearly associated with a 9% greater risk of hip fracture later in life for every additional glass consumed per day. No association with the risk of hip fracture was seen among women. Thus, existing data do not support high intakes of milk during adolescence for prevention of fractures later in life and suggest that such intakes may contribute to the high incidence of fractures in countries with the greatest milk consumption. Today, the standard business model appears to be attempting to turn as many people as possible into lifetime repeat customers. We can observe this with pharmaceutical products, but in the case of milk as well, in considering that a minimum daily intake was presented as necessary as to maintain factors such as strong bones due to its calcium content. True? No. Actually, in looking at about 10,000 American men and women, no association was found between taking calcium and the hip's mineral density. Even more telling, although not to be taken as causative, paradoxically, countries with the highest intake of milk and calcium tend to have the highest rates of hip fractures. Now, of course, it could very well be that some other factors leading to this. However, in considering that the nutritious components of milk can be obtained by other means, it may be best to seek them elsewhere. And this especially being the case when considering milk's association with various forms of cancer in men and women. I brought up Dr. Stephen Gundry, and he does bring up some interesting points regarding milk that are not taken into consideration in the study. One of which being the difference between A1 and A2 casein milk. A1 apparently being the unhealthy form, coming from the typical black and white cows most Americans are used to seeing, and A2 coming from an alternative form of cow. Additionally, there is also the subject of pasteurized versus raw milk. I may go more into these subjects in the future, but in the meantime, keep this information in mind the next time you're at the store thinking about what to put on your cereal.